of a shot of winning. We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
And welcome back to the New York Jets Atlantic Flight Podcast. And today we are going to be discussing tight ends as promised. Our resident draft gurus, they say that they're not, I say that they are. Timmy and Ryan, they've been studying the prospects. They've got a few favourites and then they've got some that they're less keen on. But they're going to fill you in on what we need, what we don't need. I think it's fair to say that we do need a passing threat and we do need someone that is fairly capable of blocking. Having a good tight end on your team is basically another good offensive lineman. So instead of having 5 on the line, you'd have 6 on the line. And we've got Justin Fields, a mobile quarterback this year. So having a tight end with a little bit of mobility. So I'm sure the guys are going to address this. And without further ado, I will pass you over to Ryan, who's going to start talking about Tyler Warren, I believe. Ryan.
Hello, Gus. Yeah, thank you. So, I think we're all in agreement that tight end is a particularly weak area for the team right now. We've let, as of now, Conklin has gone to the Chargers. Yeboah has gone to, I forget where he's gone now. But
we'll find out.
I feel like it's I want to say Steelers, but I don't think it is. But we've lost pretty much the entirety of that tight end room aside from Ruckert, and we've brought in Stone Smart. So this is an area we particularly need some help, especially at the moment without a consensus right tackle. So I think looking at these guys and assessing whether they're capable of being a blocking tight end, a catching tight end, or a bit of both, and kind of where they'll be able to line up and their versatility. So a big thing to point out, which we spoke about just before we came on air, was how there really does seem to be a prototype of tight ends here. So just to put it into context, George Kittle is 6'4" and 250 pounds, and a lot of these guys land between 6'4" and 6'6", and roughly 240 to 260. So Tyler Warren lands at the 6'6", 257 pounds. So he's a big old boy. And I believe his unofficial 40, I've taken this from NFL Draft Buzz, was 4.68, whereas I think actually at the combine he ran a little bit slower than that. I think he was in the 4.7 region. He seems to be the consensus tight end one for the most part, although I've heard somebody recently say they like Loveland, but we'll get on to him later. He's a great blocker. He's been talked about as being an additional help for maybe a rookie right tackle, just because his blocking is that good. His catching, he loves a contested catch. He's strong. He's big bodied. He's not afraid of going up with a guy. His short and intermediate catches are on the money. He's not too bad as a deep threat either. If he has to sort of work the seam, he is described as a multi-role tight end. Now, his last season, he achieved 1,200 yards, which is incredible at any level, to be honest, for a tight end. And I think he is a proven leader within that team. That Penn State team leaned on him a lot. He played in a wildcat role at times, sometimes a fullback. He basically did what he needed to do to drag that team along at times. So I'm a big fan of Tyler Warren. I'm not sure we will pick him at 7. I'm not sure we should pick him at 7, but I definitely wouldn't be disappointed if we did pick him at 7.
Do you have a comparison there, Ryan? An NFL tight end already?
So personally, I'm not great with comparisons, but if you go by what they're saying on NFL Draft Buzz, theirs are quite good. Obviously, the obvious one is Pat Freiermuth, having been a Penn State tight end as well. And I'm not sure Freiermuth has really got to the level in the NFL that we expected him to. So that could be down to scheming. That could be all sorts of reasons and a couple of injuries he's had along the way. But the one I probably prefer slightly would be Michael Mayer, just because I think he's, again, a big-bodied leader, multiple catching sort of radius, and good route runner, big body guy that will block. The only thing is now with Mayer being in Vegas with Brock Bowers is that he's not going to be utilised in the same way. So that comparison might drop off once we see Warren in the NFL. One stat that I've picked up on a lot of these guys, which I think is interesting and something that I want to raise on a few of my guys, is the QBR when targeted. Now, Tyler Warren's quarterback rating when targeted was 123.1, which just to put it into some simple terms means that essentially when he's targeted, he pretty much catches it. There's a play that comes off of that target. Whereas if you look at a guy that maybe is achieving in the 80s on that, then maybe those plays are a bit hit and miss. That can be down to the quarterback, that can be down to the player himself. But realistically, it's going to be very difficult for a good tight end and a good quarterback to achieve a rating like that if they're not making plays. So yeah, my opinion on Tyler Warren is that he is the tight end one in this class. And if we draft him at 7, I won't be disappointed. I just think that we can still achieve good value at this position later down the line because of how deep this class is.
Yeah, that sounds pretty comprehensive. Timmy, your next tight end, who have you got?
Well, I might just give a note there on Warren as well. Great job, Ryan. That's how you start a podcast. Great intro.
On the money.
So for me, I can't add much more to that because it was very comprehensive, right? But just something that I did notice, I suppose, from a negativity point of view, when he gets the ball, he really demands contact. And whilst that can be a great thing, I think that, he's huge. He's 6'6". He's 256 pounds, but he drops his shoulder every time he comes into a tackle. I'd worry about that when you hit the NFL. You have bigger and stronger guys who you're up against. So just something to kind of, if you're looking at him and you're looking at his highlight reel, maybe just have a look at that. He just drops his shoulder all the time. And I'd be a bit worried about that in the longer term. I think something else to note, I suppose, from a Jets perspective is that I think he can be absolutely Justin Fields' best friend. He's brilliant when it comes to the short and intermediate game. He catches everything. He's going to get some yak for you because he's just so hard to take down as well. So I think that he's going to be a brilliant scheme fit for us if we bring him in. Listening to some podcasts during the week, though, and I hear people saying, if you want to really improve your run game, you bring in Tyler Warren, that he can, make up for maybe not having such a strong guy at right tackle. And I don't really buy into that. I think that's a bit fanciful to think that he can make that much of an impact in the run game. While he's a good blocker, he's a big guy, I think you still need to have the right tackle beside him who can elevate him as well. I don't think that he's going to elevate the run game as much as we're hearing some people in the media saying. So for me, I think he can be a great fit. I'd be very excited if we took him. It's not the direction I want to go, and I think everybody knows that. But it's a pick. If it happens, I'd get on board. I'd be very excited by it. I think that he's going to do damage, especially when he's coming into the slot and he's running the shorter routes, demanding yak, and I think he could be a big impact player for us. It's not the direction I would go from a tight end perspective. And maybe we close out this pod by just saying if you could maybe pick 2 guys, what would that look like for both myself and Ryan and yourself, Gus?
Yeah.
So maybe that's a good way we'll close this up. But for me, it wouldn't be the direction I'd go, but I could get excited by it.
That's pretty good.
And you said then who's the next guy up, and I think that we're all fairly aligned. I know, Gus, that you probably have Loveland maybe even a little bit ahead of Warren, but Loveland is the next guy up. I've watched him a good bit more since the last time we talked about tight ends on the podcast, and I have to admit he's a much better player than I thought he was. He catches everything, runs good routes, moves a little bit like a wide receiver. I think that you could comp him to the top wide receivers in the games, the Kelce's. That's what he looks like. Again, he worked beside quite a good offensive line, and this is where I think that can make a difference. If you have a good O-line beside you, it just makes him be more dynamic. Catches everything. What else do I have in my notes here on him? 6'5", 245 pounds. Ran a good 40 as well. 4.7 for such a big guy was very good. Just an all-round receiving threat. Not going to get the same from him as a blocker as you're going to get from the Tyler Warrens or some of the other tight ends. But yeah, good again, intermediate routes, and a lot to like there as well. I'm not sure why Kelce would probably be the comp I would have for him, in that he's probably not as good a blocker. He's well able to run routes. He's going to be a threat for whoever the QB is going to be. So for us, I think Fields, or if we do bring in a rookie, I think that he's somebody who can make a big impact straight away. He's someone who's going to come in and be your tight end 1, and that's what you're going to get from him in the first round. I wouldn't like to take him at 7. I think he'd be a trade back guy. But again, someone I could get excited about. He seems to be falling down as far as, we'll say, the 20s where the Rams are. I think that's probably where he'll go. Yeah, exciting prospect.
Yeah. One of the reasons excuse me, one of the reasons I like Loveland pretty much just, I mean, it's like, it's again, I mean, Ryan mentioned it, sort of like 1A, 1B. Well, he would be like 1A to Tyler Warren, 1B. It's just, I think I'm in the same boathouse as you, Timmy. I'd prefer to be going OT with the first pick. So how that would work out is I would prefer my first tight end off the board to be more of a receiving tight end than a jack of all trades. I personally, I just think that Loveland is probably going to have a better. I'm going out on a limb here. I think Loveland, in my opinion, might have a better career than Tyler Warren. There you go. But what do I know about tight ends? But it just looks better to me, the eye test, from what I've seen. So that's where I'm going with the Colston Loveland pick over. Ryan, you're back up on deck.
Yeah, I'll touch on Colson Loveland briefly. I really like his route running. He's got great hands. His body control is fantastic for a tight end, especially of that size. And he has a strong athletic profile. I mean, despite 6'5" and 245, as you say, he's 4'7" is quick, but I think that actually off the mark he looks quicker than that. And he's versatile on the line. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in line. He looks good. The only thing, and again, this is what I mentioned with Tyler Warren, is his QB rating when targeted is 88.2, which is a massive drop off from Tyler Warren. But when you look that Tyler Warren was being thrown to by Drake May, and then Drew Aller, whereas Colson Loveland was, I guess, JJ McCarthy, and I can't place who their quarterback was this season off the top of my head. So there's some things to consider there. But yeah, I like Colson Loveland. I've got him as tight end 2A. My tight end 2B is Harold Fannin Jr. Those who follow me on X/Twitter and those who listen to the podcast will know I've been a fan of him for a little while. He's slightly smaller than the previous two guys. He's 6'4" and 230. And his 40 was listed as a 4.71. And so, yeah, I mean, it's negligible, the 0.01, isn't it? Let's be honest. I'll start off with like probably the weakness that I would have slightly concerns on, but it'll tie into what you've said there, Gus. I do have concerns that his blocking may need work, but I think that having looked at some of the tape, that his blocking is probably better than is being suggested by the media. But I'm of a similar ilk to Gus, where I think that actually, with how the class is looking, I would rather us go out and get an elite pass catching tight end, and then go out and get an elite blocking tight end, and let's have someone that is great at both roles, or each role, sorry, rather than getting a guy that can do a bit of everything. So the QBR rating when targeted, Harold Fannin Jr. 126.3, which is the best that I've seen of the guys I've looked at in this class. He is athletic. He can catch on almost any kind of route. He'll take over the shoulder catches deep. He'll take those intermediates. He'll take shovel passes. He'll take dump offs. He'll make himself available, almost having to quit his route to come back if it looks like his quarterback's in trouble. He seems to have great awareness of what's going on the field. I really like this guy. Don't get me wrong, Bowling Green didn't have a lot of outlets, but I mean, to me, Fannin Jr., when he did get injured, because he has had the odd injury, Bowling Green fell apart in comparison to what they were doing with him. So, and again, this is another guy that can line up anywhere across the line. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in line. His yards after the catch. And I think he led, if I'm right in saying, he led all tight ends in yards after the catch and broken tackles in 2024. So let's argue that. So Malachi Corley was the yards after catch king, the yak king, coming out of Western Kentucky at wide receiver last year. So maybe this is our yak king at tight end as well, and maybe there's a way we can get that rolling.
Wouldn't it be nice to draft a player like Malachi Corley?
and actually use him.
Yeah, I mean, also as well, just to note, this whole class, I think the oldest guy on my list is 22. Loveland and Fannin Jr. are both 20 years old.
Yeah, they are very, very young. Can I just add something to Harold Fannin Jr. as well? Because going into the combine, he was actually listed as £230, which I'm sure anyone knows is on the light side for a tight end. But he
Yeah,
actually bulked up to 240 in the combine, so he has the ability to put on bulk, which is good to see. And if you did see them in the combine, his BMI must be like negligible. So he can put on the bulk. So, and I agree with you, Ryan. Ideally, apparently we're going to be running a lot of two tight end sets. I don't know how people know that, but apparently people are suggesting that we could be running a lot of two tight end sets. And the point you're making, do you want two jacks of all trades that aren't really? I mean, when you're talking Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren as the 1-2, you're not going to get both of those. So you could get one or the other plus another. So whoever your second tight end's going to be, I mean, we've got Ruckert still at the moment, who unfortunately hasn't proved to be very good at either. In fact, I would say probably his blocking all of a sudden became worse than his catching the last couple of years. But there's a lot of players on the Jets team last year and the year before that started not performing. We all know the reasons why that is. So you've got to ask yourself, what do you actually want in your tight end, the first tight end that you take off the board, and possibly the second tight end that we take off the board. But I agree, Harold Fannin is an out-and-out receiver, and as you pointed out, Ryan, his blocking is a weakness. But Timmy, you've got anything to add to that?
Yeah, you're not going to like this, Gus,
Oh
because
my
I know
God.
you love Ron Middleton. I'm
Yes.
excited to see a new coaching staff come in and see what they can do with Ruckert. I loved him coming out. I was so excited when we picked him. He was dual threat in college, very good as a ball catcher. Probably underutilized by Ohio State because they had so many good wide receivers, as we know, in that class. But I was just so excited to see what he could do if he got some of the ball, and we didn't utilize him at all. So say what you want about Ron Middleton, right? And I know he's brilliant at doing a rah-rah speech at the Senior Bowl and very likable guy, but I don't think he's had anybody improve under him. I think everybody who's gone in there, even Conklin, Conklin, I don't think he hit the height of his ability while he was with us. It's going to be interesting to see what he does when he goes to the Chargers. I'm excited to have a new tight end coach in there, new offensive staff who are going to be able to utilize these young, huge guys who are going to be coming out, and to see if they can get the best out of Ruckert as well. Sorry, Gus.
Yeah. Can I just add something to that? Because this is dedicated to tight ends, and I think that this is worth bringing up as well. Yes, I was a huge Ron Middleton fan. I think he's probably one of these people that actually makes a better head coach than a positional coach. But hey, there you go. But our new tight ends coach is someone, if you don't know, it's called Jeff Blasco. And this isn't me saying it, I'm just reading from this. So this is Jeff Blasco. He becomes part of the Jets family after working with head coach Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys offense last season. He began his NFL coaching career with McCarthy as Green Bay's coaching administrator in 2016. He became the Packers' assistant offensive line coach in 2017-18 and then spent the 2019 season with the Cleveland Browns. Yikes. He reconnected with McCarthy and the Cowboys and was the team's first offensive line coach 2020 to 2022 before being promoted to offensive run game coordinator and running backs coach in 23-24. So you're looking at a guy, he's been around the offensive line, he's been around running backs, he's been around tight ends. That's not a bad resume to come into the Jets with what we're looking to achieve with our tight ends. So obviously we're going to be using tight ends as fullbacks as well. So
Brilliant point.
I think this is a really good hire, sneaky good.
Couple that with a guy with a running back background come in as our
QB's coach.
As a QB coach, sorry, yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So we're going to be running the ball a lot. Just on Fannin, I've a lot of stuff on my notes actually that you've touched on, Ryan, already. 20 years old, really good with the ball in his hands.
Charles London, by the way.
Oh, yeah, well done. Thank you. One-handed catch at the Senior Bowl was really nice. He flashed. I don't know if you saw it. The ball kind of came to his back shoulder and he caught it with one hand. He, as you said, he led all tight ends in missed tackles, forced with 34, and Yak last season. One of the smaller tight ends at the combine, though, 6'3" and a quarter and 241 pounds. Which, while that's small, when you look at kind of the guys in the league, like Laporta, it's actually quite similar to Laporta, who's 6'3", 245. So I think that's okay. His 40-yard dash was okay, 4.71, and there was talk about his stock dropping after the combine, which I kind of don't buy into, to be honest, because I still think it's okay. He only had an average vertical and broad jump, but his agility scores were brilliant with the 6.97 in the three cone, which was the second fastest amongst tight ends in 2025, and a 4.39 shuttle, which was the third fastest. So there's a lot to like with him. Little undersized compared to this class, but I think okay when it comes to the rest of the league. What you're getting with him though is definitely just, it's all about the receptions and receiving yards with him. For me, I have a different guy as my third tight end. I've got Mason Taylor in there, who I really like. I suppose I just like his profile. I think if you're going to take a guy in the second into the early first round, it has to be somebody who's going to be a really top tight end. Laporta is a perfect example. They took him in the second round. They haven't looked back. You're going to have production from him, but you're always also going to have a guy who is going to be leading as a tight end in the league. So for me, I think Mason Taylor meets that kind of profile. When you look at what he did at LSU, you look at him being interviewed, he's a real leader of men. Even when he was in high school, I think it was during COVID, he asked his mother if they could get a jugs machine into their garage, or garage as they say in the States. And all of the rest of the team were coming around to his house. They were hanging around. It explains why he's got such good hands. He's got a big pair of 10-inch hands and he catches everything. So he obviously spent loads of time on that jugs machine at home, and it's paying off for him now as he's heading into the league. Clutch player as well. He showed up for LSU in the big games as well. I think he's a statement player due to what he brings culturally as well. Son of the Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, and his nephew Zach Thomas as well. So football is in his family. I saw his dad also interviewed at the Senior Bowl, and they just seem to live and breed football in that family. That's the type of guy you want to have in your locker room who's going to come in. I think it's the type of player that we're going to be looking for when you look at the background of our staff. Former players, people who just love football guys, and I think that's what he's going to bring you as well. Lots of production in college as well. First player in LSU to have 100 receptions and 1,000 yards in program history. Just ticks loads of boxes for me, right? I think he's improved as well as he's gone through every year. Blocking was something he needed to work on, and he's put a lot of work into that, and you can see that he's improved there as well. So for me, he's a player, if we took him even in the second, I think he's kind of an into the second round type of player. If we took him that early, I could really see why, because I think you pick him and you never look back.
So interestingly, I wasn't massive on Mason Taylor before the combine. I really liked his combine. I thought he looked really fast. He looked strong. He was, his athletic profile just jumped off the screen at the combine. Even though he's broken those records with Michigan, that 1,000 yards and 100 receptions is across 3 years, which kind of feels a bit low in terms of targets. But it's difficult because being an SEC team like LSU, you've got multiple outlets. So he's vying for targets with a lot of good players. So I'm not dramatically concerned by that, but I actually have Mason Taylor slightly behind another guy. I really like his awareness on the field from what I've been watching. He seems to have this real awareness for where to find the space and to get separation when he's going to be targeted. And I mean, obviously that does tie in with his sort of speed as well, his acceleration. He seems to be, like, for his size, 6'5", 255, and his 40 is sub 4.7 is fantastic. So I do like him. And
also, he's 20 years of age as well, as you said. And I had the same thing written in my notes. Great at finding the soft parts of coverage as well. Yeah.
I don't know if I could have him on the team, being the son of Jason Taylor. I just want to add that.
So interestingly, I actually have Terence Ferguson above him. Not by a lot. I mean, genuinely, you could almost have this class. You could have a tight end 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B. You could honestly do that almost all the way through there.
Yeah.
So my other guy is Terence Ferguson. I think that almost identical athletic profile. I think that coming from Oregon, I just like the fact that they've been winning the last few years. They've built this culture there where they're going to compete every year. They're going to be out there and play against the best teams and compete with them, and they're doing their damnedest to get to the natty every year. I really like Terence Ferguson's route running. I think that he can run a variety of routes. He seems to understand the difference between the dummy routes and the routes where he's going to be targeted, but actually being able to sell a dummy route can be quite difficult, I think, especially in college. And he seems to do that quite well. Really good hands again. I mean, this class is just loaded with guys that can compete and catch the ball and run a good route. Like, honestly, it's funny how many of these guys, when we listen back, we're going to be like, oh, we said the same thing about these guys almost all the way through. But again, a big red zone threat. My only issue with Terence Ferguson would probably be his contact. He doesn't seem to be consistent in terms of going through contact or surviving contact on his feet. So I would be a little concerned that if we're putting him in a position where he's got to go one-on-one with a big linebacker, he's probably going to go to ground. I don't think he'll have a lot of yak in the NFL unless he's got a mismatch. But he's one of the slightly older guys in this class as well at 22. So you can kind of go two ways. You can look at it as the 20-year-olds, you've got plenty of career out of them, or you can look at a guy that's 2 years older and say, yeah, he's got that little bit more experience, that little bit more maturity. So pick your poison almost, I guess. I suppose with Mason Taylor and Terence Ferguson, the difference, like I say, they're size-wise, they're almost identical. Their 40-yard time is identical. The big difference here is whether you want a guy that can provide you that yak with the good hands and with that athletic profile with the poor path protection in Mason Taylor, or do you want to go with a guy that's got the good hands, the route running, a red zone threat, but has contact concerns if he's going to be getting the ball across the intermediate. So, yeah, genuinely, of the first five guys we've spoken about so far, I'm not going to be disappointed if we take any of them. It just depends on where we take them personally.
He projects. Sorry, Timmy. I just want to add.
Go for it.
His combine. He is one of the lighter tight ends in this class. You're right. They're all so bunched. After you've got the top two, possibly three tight ends out, they are bunched incredibly tightly, and there's not really a lot to separate them all. But just looking at his combine, he was way above. In terms of percentile, in the 40-yard, he was 84. Vertical, he had 97% percentile. 10-yard dash, it was at 93 percentile. Broad jump was 87. And then it all starts sloping off. He hasn't got the greatest wingspan. He hasn't got the longest arms, that is a worry as a blocker. He's got small hands, and as I say, he's light for a tight end. So that would worry me. But he can catch. So I think anyone that does end up with him will be looking to play him as a receiving tight end rather than an all-rounder or probably a slot tight end. But he does seem to be on the draft boards I'm looking at. He does seem to be rising up most people's draft boards, which is interesting. Timmy, sorry.
Yeah, no, so he did a great 40, as you say, top of the class, but that speed I thought showed up as well when you look at him in game. Just real good size and speed combo when it comes to him being 6'5". A little bit lighter for this class at 247, but I wouldn't like to get hit by him at the same time. So 39-inch vertical as well. I thought it really shows when you see him at the line of scrimmage, he really takes off. And that showed up again with him leading tight ends there to 39-inch vertical as well. Really good 10-yard split. I just really liked the way he moved on the field. His RAS score, if we had our former GM, would be exciting at 9.81. I really like him. I've talked about him before here. I've watched the Ducks a good bit this year, and he always stood out as being a threat every time we watched the game. I remember tweeting about him and just saying, look, he really stood out as a good candidate. He's improved as well every year in college. 591 yards last year. at 13.7 yards per reception, which is fantastic, averaging just under 50 yards per game. So I think you know what you're going to get with him. I'd be very excited if we took him in the third round. I think he will be there in the third round as well. I don't think Mason Taylor will be. I think he'll probably go by the time we're picking the third round. A lot to like with him. Another player who's just, good pass catcher, is going to get open, good at getting separation because of that speed profile. And you know that he's going to get a mismatch at 6'5", so an ideal guy to bring in as well.
Yep. Who's the next tight end? I can't remember who's up next.
So it's me. So, and I'd agree with you, right? I think the consensus guy who would have been ahead of Ferguson and Taylor is Arroyo. I probably would have Taylor ahead of him, and then it's kind of tough to pick between him and Ferguson. I think the challenge with Arroyo is the injury history. When you look at how he performed at the Senior Bowl, he stood out as a performer. Came in, I mean, every time he was put up against anybody, he won all of his duels, caught everything, looked like a red zone threat there as well. So a lot to like there. You were talking earlier about the QB rating when targeted. For him is 129, so brilliant profile there as well. Decent enough blocker. As I said, 6'4", 251 pounds. The right size profile as well, in and around the same as those other guys. The injury history is the challenge with him, 21 years old. I think that he could be a superstar if he can stay healthy. What's your thoughts on that? You probably have watched him a little bit more than I have, given who he plays for.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said I've necessarily watched more of him other than when they've gone up against Florida. But yeah, the injuries are a concern for me. He genuinely has had only one good season from where he's been available, which was last season. And yeah, on paper, everything looks like it should work for this guy. And I'm just a bit gun shy with him. I have him way further down my board than consensus. He concerns me. He scares me. Those injuries, 3 years in college of not really seeing much ball to hand, and then one good year, which was also Cam Ward's best year. So I don't know. He scares me. I'd rather, if we could get value on him, I'd take a punt. But I think that you're right in terms of the consensus being that he'll go in or before round 3, and I'm just not willing to put that kind of spend on a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy for more than a season. And being knee injuries, that really worries me.
According to Miami's the Hurricane site, he did have two knee injuries, of which he had surgery for, and apparently he's fully healthy. So, but I'm with you, Ryan. Knee injuries, and you're talking NFL, you're talking faster, everything stronger, heavier, all the rest of it. It would be a concern with me. Will it affect his draft stock? More than likely. I think it's buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. I would like to have seen him run in the combine. So he was able to perform at the Senior Bowl. For me, there's no reason he's not like one of the guys who was going to go in the first round who doesn't need to run. I'd have liked to see him run a 40. He was there. He did the bench press. So I don't understand why he couldn't have done a 40. I would be really worried about him. Boomer bust candidate. He could be a superstar. But you know what? He's a guy who could be out of the league in 2 years if he's not a knee injury. So, yeah.
I think there's a really good chance we see someone like Arroyo land somewhere like Atlanta, and they almost sort of test out that first year to see if they can move on from Pitts. And if they can, if he's not going to be healthy, then I could see them probably extending Pitts and hoping for him to finally break out. But I can only see Arroyo landing with someone that's got a better tight end situation than us, to be honest.
And I think he drops to the 5th round because of the injury profile, if I'm honest. Like I said, he was brilliant in the Senior Bowl. When you see him out there, he looks great. But it's just, who's really, really willing to invest a top 100 pick in a guy that may be out of the league so quickly? It's just not worth the risk.
The Jets 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it'd been ideal.
I think the round 5 would be probably the most I'd be willing to spend on him, given all of those
Yeah.
bits and pieces. But let's not take anything away from the play from him last year. He was electric for Miami. He was a massive outlet for Cam Ward. He got yards, he got touchdowns, and he had his best year. So yeah, let's not take anything away from that. But to be realistic, we are Jets fans. We are used to getting guys that have an injury history and then being surprised when they spend their whole career with us injured, only to move on and suddenly become healthy everywhere else, and be pro bowlers. But not that I'm bitter. But we've just seen this too many times with the Jets that it just scares me too much to take that punt.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we've just all touched on this. This tight end class outside of the top 3 prospects, we've all said they are all very, very close together. So, and this is where I think his draft stock is going to drop. If they're all so close together, you're not going to put the guy who had injury issues over someone that's never had injury issues, despite them being possibly a better athlete. That is going to get taken into consideration because they are so tightly packed together. So you said 5th round. Do you know what? I could see him possibly even dropping into the 6th.
Yeah. The interesting thing about him as well is he's not really a contested catch guy. Like, he really relies on his release and his route running. So
Yeah, space.
like this is why you want to see him run the 40 and just make sure that those knees are able to put up with him actually being put into a situation like that where he has to push himself and go through all the drills. I'd like to have seen it, and it just hasn't happened.
Do you think that's why you didn't?
Look, it looks that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely concerns and justifiable concerns because of all of these reasons we've shared. So, again, I mean, I'm going to come back to this phrase quite often today, I think, and it's pick your poison. If you think that he is that guy that can get those explosive plays at tight end, and you think he's healthy, then yeah, why not? But for all the reasons we've said, it's just a bit of a concern if we go spend too much value on it, especially given the guys that are there.
I think he needs to go to a team that's already got an established number 1 and possibly even an established number 2 tight end. And if he booms, then you make one of those other guys expendable.
He's the type of player who goes to the Ravens. He's the type of player who goes to the Ravens. Yeah. Mark Andrews is leaving this year. They have Likely already. They're kind of okay there. They could sit him for a year or 2, get him healthy, and all of a sudden he's the next guy up. It's just what they do. So that's what you could see him doing.
I think the other one I wouldn't be surprised by would be the Lions.
Yeah,
that's where your Boa's gone, by the way.
Yeah, so I could see that if he was there at value, someone like the Lions might take him and just sort of see how he competes. But again, I just every time I think about it, I just can't see Arroyo going top 3 rounds. But I think there's absolutely a chance that somebody does because of how he's being projected. But it's just not there for me.
It has to be a team who doesn't need him to come in straight away. I think that's a brilliant point what you're making about saying that he can compete with somebody. Like, you want him to get healthy. You want to give him the time. Like, the medical is going to be huge for how he performs. But we've seen it before where we've seen guys who were really ranked even in the 1st round. What's the name of the linebacker who went to the Eagles and dropped to the 3rd round because he had a pec issue. Oh, I'd love them coming out. Can't think of his name now. But he's this type of thing. He's going to drop and somebody's going to take him. And he's going to have to sit. Because if a team like us takes him, we're going to put him in first week. He's going to get injured and
same old Jets.
There you go.
So my next guy, this isn't necessarily in order of how I rank them, but I would prioritize this guy over a couple of others. I have a couple of other guys that I rank higher, but for me, this guy is an out-and-out pass catcher, is incredible, and I think that if we can get him, I would be over the moon. Now, that's Rondé Gadsden.
I knew it.
Second.
I knew it.
And like I say, I've got a couple of guys ahead of him in terms of their whole package, but for me, Gadsden out of Syracuse, 6'5", 236, so he is light compared to some of the other guys. Very similar, I suppose, in the athletic profile of Harold Fannin Jr. Maybe I've got a type, I don't know. He does operate as a tight end, but there's a lot of chatter that he could work as a tight end and slot hybrid, which I think if you're looking for a versatile offense and you're looking for the type of offense that is going to keep defenses guessing. He's the sort of guy you want. You can line him up almost where you like across there, and he's gonna make himself available for a catch. Reliable hands, fantastic awareness. Carl McCord had a great season with Gadsden, but he does have some injury concerns. His 40 that I picked up off of NFL Draft Buzz was 4.55, which is the fastest of all of these tight ends, I think, by a good 0.1 of a second. He is strong, he is fast, but again, one of the injuries I think was a shoulder, and then one of the others I believe was a knee. So those are concerns. But if we can grab him between rounds 5 and 7, I'm all for it. He's an athlete. He's exciting, and he's going to give you an outlet that you can switch between tight end and wide receiver, I think.
He's got pedigree as well. His dad was around Gadsden, and if anyone not knowing where that name comes from, Miami Dolphins, his dad used to gash us badly every time we played the Dolphins. So it'd be nice to have him on the Jets to do exactly the same thing to them. That would be just beautiful.
Stick a couple of fingers back up at them.
He's another one that concerns me, if I'm honest. He's 6'5", which surprised me when I saw the high profile come in, because he looks about 6'7" when he's out there. He kind of has that Zach Kuntz look about him, where he's kind of tall and wiry looking and kind of gangly. There's a lot to like, right? He's got a 6'9" wingspan, which is humongous, right? It's phenomenal. The Pro Day 40, 4.62 is very fast, and he looks fast out there, but he doesn't look like a guy, I think, that looks like he could take contact very well. As you say, offensively, the QBR ranking when targeted is 114.4. He catches the ball really well, especially in the short game. You know, I don't know if he's a major yak guy necessarily, but I think that he's somebody who will catch the ball. I think if you stick him in the red zone as well, he looks like a guy who can, you know, go up for the ball. I would just worry about him injury wise as well, and as you say, he's had injuries to parts of the body that are a big concern. He just reminds me of Kuntz, the way he moves, just that kind of gangly kind of look about him. His weight is 243, which surprised me. I think he looks even lighter. Kind of the Peter Crouch kind of profile, if you know what I mean. That's kind of how I'm going to describe it. Just long and skinny. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like, he catches everything. And he's great. That way, I would worry about it. That would be my concern with him.
Yeah, I mean that. We have, it's probably a good time to bring him up with Arroyo's things. I suppose he's probably similar to Arroyo in those same concerns. The big thing I would say, which puts me personally with Gadsden above Arroyo, is that we've seen that production across multiple years. So in 2022, he recorded 969 yards, 6 touchdowns off 61 receptions. Then he lost the whole of his 2023 year pretty much. And then he came back in 2024, and despite missing a few games, he had 73 receptions for 934 yards and 7 touchdowns. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's those kind of numbers, especially in Syracuse. Like, let's be honest, like, Syracuse aren't known for putting up big stats and stuff like that, as much as they are a competitive team in their own conference. I think they surprised a few people the last couple of years with some of these productions, and there are some good-looking guys coming out of there. And, do you know, yeah, the injuries are a concern.
Yeah.
If we're talking day 3 value, I'm taking the punt, because I think that we can utilize him in many, many ways. And like you say, he profiles almost taller than he is, doesn't he? And it just feels like he can go up and grab the ball. Again, that the contact thing does concern me too, which you brought up there. I do think he's the kind of guy that is going to make guys miss, a bit like the wide receiver we've just signed, Tyler Johnson. I don't think the contact, if he can avoid the contact, I think he'll do great. And I think he can have a long career. I think like where Lockett used to always drop down before somebody hit him kind of thing. But if he can make guys miss, I think he's going to extend plays really nicely, because he's got that quickness off the mark and that ability to pivot on the spot as well.
That shows up in his yards per route. Apart from the year he got injured, you're looking at like between 12 and 16 yards per route, which is great. They're obviously not afraid in Syracuse of him getting hurt. They gave him a rush for 12 yards as well in 2024, which I'm going to have to find the clip of that. Would be hilarious to watch. So I must find that one. But yeah, that's kind of my take on him. Sorry, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think that, that again, it's a pick your poison between him and Arroyo really on day 3, isn't it?
A
I
guy
would
who I
take him over
think,
him. I would take him over
would you? Yeah.
Arroyo. Yeah, definitely. I also like. I mean, when you've got a wingspan as big as that, what did you say? 81 3/4 inch wingspan. You don't have to be that accurate with the ball. So for someone like Fields, who isn't the greatest gifted passer of the ball, having someone that could catch a ball that isn't exactly on target because they've got
Just stick
such
it up
a,
there.
yeah, it makes things a little bit easier. And I don't think he said, I mean, all the draft bios that I see on him say he's not a very good blocker, but from what I've seen of him, his blocking isn't all that bad. And again, another thing which I think makes him very, very valuable is he can line up all over the field. So he can play in the slot, in line, what have you. He can line up anywhere. So you're going to get a mismatch with him as well, which
And
ironically is what his dad used to do as well. So I prefer him over Arroyo easily.
and maybe I'm making the comparison to Kunz because I'm used to having terrible offensive coordinators, right? And maybe Tanner Engstrand takes a guy who's like that and does something with him. So maybe that's it. It's just I'm used to the trauma of having bad offensive play. So maybe he can be a guy. A guy who, for me, I think is going potentially could be a real steal in the draft is Gunnar Helm. Had a really bad pro day, not pro day, really bad combine, and I think that he was injured. He sprained his foot during the combine, if you remember, and all the photographs were coming out afterwards of his foot after being blown up. And he probably should have pulled out, but kept going. And did put up terrible numbers for the day. But when you go and look at what he did when he was with Texas, production was there. Brilliant pass catcher as well, good blocker. When I was looking at him, I just wrote down he took good blocking angles, really leveraging distance well. He had very good awareness of where the first down marker was, right? And that's something that we kind of have not seen, I suppose, with the Jets the last few years. How many times have you seen run third down and we catch the ball 2 yards short? When he catches the ball, he tends to turn to get himself that extra yard or two to get over the marker, which I noticed, which I thought was really cool. Athletic with the ball in his hands, showing burst and acceleration. So I think those combine numbers just aren't him. Ran good routes and had good hands, and 137 QB ranking when targeted as well. But like when you look at the combine numbers, 34% percentile for his 40, 4.48, terrible vert. I think he was just injured, and I think because of that, I think that you're going to get a guy 6'5", 241, and can do really well with the ball in his hands. And I think he could drop to the 4th or the 5th round, and I would be delighted to take him there because of that. A little bit older, nearly 22 and a half years old. But yeah, he's somebody I'd be excited for us to take as well.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said on Gunnar Helm. I think that he probably has hurt his draft stock a little bit. I think initially going into the draft after the college season ended, I probably had him as a round 2/3 grade. However, I didn't really want us to spend that on him. Fantastic blocker, good contested catch guy. As you say, a little bit older. I'd be happy. I think he probably goes round 4, but I'd be happy if we, again, day 3 for him. I wouldn't want to go much more than that at the moment, probably, just because of other needs more than anything. And I think that our need for a great pass catching tight end is probably greater than a great blocking tight end. And I think that I'll let you cover the great blocking tight end that we're probably going to have to cover before we finish up. But I think that for me, I would rather target one of the pass catching guys over him in that similar value. But again, I'm not going to be disappointed if we land him. Like that's the truth. That all these guys, like if any of the ones we mentioned so far land on our team, barring maybe Arroyo, I would be excited about. And Arroyo, I'd be excited if we got him at the right value.
Yeah, agreed.
I'll say this is my last guy, and then hopefully we've got time for Timmy to cover the greatest blocking tight end in this class. So I'm going to bring up Mitchell Evans. I wasn't sure whether I was going to say about him or Jake Briningstall, but I'm going to go Mitchell Evans because I think that actually, for what we want and need, he's probably the better fit. Fantastic hands and body control from Mitchell Evans. He's 6'5". DraftBuzz has him at 260. which is massive, really. He's a tough competitor. He's come out of that Notre Dame team that has this real toughness about them, this real winning mentality, this real dog in them. To be honest, he's a physical blocker, so he's almost a jack of all trades. But I do fancy that he is going to offer us more in the catching game than in the blocking game. My only concern would be that he's had a couple of ACL issues a few years ago, but that does seem to be 2022, I think, that happened. So he seems to have had 2 clear years of that, which is good. And a QBR rating when targeted of 99.3, which for someone that mixes it up between being a good pass catcher, I'm not going to say great, a good pass catcher with good control, and not quick enough to find space. A lot of his catches are more contested. I'm quite happy with a 99.3 out of him. So yeah, I'll rattle through that one quickly. I'll hand over to you, Timmy, if you've got anything on Evans before you touch on someone else.
Yeah, no, I didn't have much on him. He reminded me a lot of Michael Mayer, which sounds a bit lazy because obviously they played for the same program. But I thought that there was a lot more to like about him. He surprised me. He's probably a better tight end than I was expecting. I think everything you said is perfect there. Just kind of good balance. Not going to be a guy who is going to be, top of the tight end market when he comes to second contract, but a guy who can come in and do a job for you, who can flash from time to time. I don't think he'll be amazing, but I think he'll be a good tight end 2 type of thing.
Yeah, I think if we can get the right value on him, again, it's a lot of these guys we're talking value, but I think if we can get the right value on him, then I think we could land a really strong prospect. And I found his comps a bit odd. I don't really see him as a Cade Otton type receiver, a tight end. I'd like to see him more, I suppose, perform more in the mold of a George Kittle, maybe without the flash and maybe without the sort of quickness, but that aggressive willingness for contact and blocking, and that leadership, with some good strong pass catching ability for me.
Totally agree. So that tees us up nicely for Jackson Hawes. Elite blocker. Elite blocker. And when you see him moving people around on the turf, it's easy to see why people are describing him that way. Strangely, I thought that he didn't do amazingly on the sled at the combine, but his blocking really shows up when he's in game. When I was looking at him, he surprised me a little bit in that I think he's got decent hands when he gets the ball. He just isn't a brilliant route runner. So I think that if you put the ball in his hands, he's going to catch it. So I think that he's maybe a bit undervalued as a catcher. His QBR rating when targeted is actually 105.7, which is not bad. It's actually quite good. So yeah, he's the guy who I think I'd like to pair with anybody else. If we're picking 2 tight ends, I'd like to have him out there, for 12 personnel. I think he's a guy who can help us in the run game. Just gritty, 6'4", plays bigger than the 253 pounds that he is. His arms aren't huge, but that definitely doesn't show up when you see him out there. I think that there's loads of upside with him. I think he's somebody who can make a big impact to you culturally. I think you can ground and pound with him in the team. Hasn't had massive production, but hasn't been fed the ball too much either while he's been in college. And I think that's kind of the profile on him. I don't think there's kind of much more to say on him. What you see is what you get. Anything you want to add on that, maybe, Ryan?
No, not a great deal. I mean, I think this is the guy, if we're going to go out and get a pass catching tight end in any number of the guys we've already mentioned, that this needs to be the complement. This needs to be the pepper to your salt. Because he is going to offer that aggressiveness in the blocking. I really like the idea of having someone like him operating in a 2 tight end set and blocking, but being available for those dump offs. Because if your receivers aren't open and your tight end has pancaked someone and has just stood there waiting for the ball and he's got a bit of open space in front of him, even if it's 5 yards, to get a little bit of a head of steam behind him, he's going to make that 10 yards just through sheer will. Because of his size and strength. So for me, I think that's right. I think Jackson Hawes is the guy to pair with any one of these pass catching guys. And genuinely, I think that I'm right, and hopefully you guys agree, but I think that actually Tyler Warren at 7 is probably a misstep given the amount of talent we can find elsewhere at better value, especially if we can get a Armand Membu or a Tet McMillan or whatever you prefer at 7. I think we can look at rounds 2 to 7 for 2 of these guys and hit.
You've nicked my thunder. You both have, actually.
Sorry.
No, not at all. So it's me saying it. I was going to say exactly what you guys have said as well. I think we're all singing from the same song sheet here. The thing I can't believe you. I did not know that you were going to say Jack Hawes there. So I can't believe you said it, because I was going to bring this up, that he was going to be my sleeper blocking back. So that's why I let out that, oh my God, when you said it. It's like, what?
Can I throw in one more wild card? I know we're up on time.
I've just finished it. What I will say is, I think he actually projects really, really well into what our proposed offensive game is going to be. Remember, we've got Fields as a versatile running quarterback who's going to need blocking. Apparently, we're going to lean heavily on the run game, which is not really a surprise when you consider the backs that we've got. And with the personnel that we've got, with the schemes that we've got, if we're going to be running big packages, heavy personnel, I think he would fit right in. And as you've just said, Ryan, and if you said, Timmy, if we're going to get a more balanced tight end or a catching tight end, this guy is the perfect accompaniment. Salt to the pepper, as you said. Absolutely agree. Timmy, go ahead.
I love that salt to the pepper analogy. I'm gonna steal that. There's one guy who I was kind of looking at this morning, who surprised me a little bit. A guy called Jalen Conyers, who was projecting to go in the 6th or the 7th round. He's had great production in college, career 104 receptions for 1,166 yards and 11 touchdowns from Texas Tech. Not the fastest guy, 4.75, but he did a really nice job in the gauntlet, caught everything, and like he'd one ball that was kind of thrown a little bit behind me, caught that too. Kind of willing blocker. QBR rating on target is 98.5. For a guy that's 260 pounds, he's 6'4", really athletic on when he's out there. Kind of looked like a wide receiver. Does that kind of little stutter step move that Garrett Wilson does as well, and is very good at making space for himself. So if you're going to go and look at somebody for the later rounds and just maybe have a look, just have a quick look at him. I just thought that he was a very interesting guy that I would love to take a punt on in the later rounds. Who I just think is great upside, good broad jump as well, good shuttle. Really liked him.
Yeah, I'm not massively clued up on Conyers after you mentioned him this morning, so I won't add anything invaluable to the conversation. But what I would say is we could easily see a situation where we are in day 3 without a tight end, and between rounds 5 and 7, we could easily end up with an Evans, Gadsden, Brinningstall, Arroyo, whatever that may be, Conyers, and then paired with Hawes. Like, that is realistic, and we could fix a lot of issues on the rest of the roster with best player available on day 1 and day 2. But that's it. That's all I've got now. Jake Brinningstall will be the only one that we haven't really gone into, but I appreciate time is against us a little bit at the minute.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot to like out here, isn't there, with these tight ends? It's like Jackson Hawes would be my second tight end taken. A lot of people, draft boards actually have him going undrafted. I can't see him going undrafted. I think he will either go in the 6th or 7th. But as you guys have said, to be honest, Gadsden, someone like that, even Gunnar Helm, Arroyo, I'm missing, Harold Fannin. I think if we're going to go the route that I hope we go, so it'll be somewhere in the region of offensive tackle, maybe safety, or offensive tackle, safety, or D-line for straight the first couple of picks. I think you're probably looking in the region of then Harold Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor, and if we could get one of those guys in, and then pair him with, say, Jackson Hawes, I'd be over the moon with that pairing.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's just so much to like here. This is why I can't really understand some of the big money going out for tight ends or people talking about trading for Dallas Goedert, because I get he's proven but he's 30 years old, so he doesn't fit the prototype that we're bringing in with Muji and Glenn's guys. So go out and get yourself a 20 to 22-year-old stud and pair him with a great blocker.
Yeah,
and let's go for it.
It's not a good year to be seeking a contract for a tight end. Not with this class
Or a
coming out.
trade. If you're the Raiders looking to trade Mayer, it's not a good time either, because you're going to get
The
a guy.
value to get on him.
Yeah, you're going to like maybe a fourth or fifth rounder for him, and like you're going to get guys in this draft who are going to be able to do something for you in that round anyway. So it's hard to see where he's going to go.
So, gentlemen, have you got anything else for us on this tight end special? Anything to wrap up with? Or
Take two this draft. That's all about. Take two this draft.
Yep, I'm on the same bandwagon there. Take two tight ends and take two D line. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out, but yeah, we're desperately short on the D line as well. Obviously, we've only got Rucker as a tight end at the moment, so we need at least two, possibly three. I would imagine that we will go undrafted free agents as well. Timmy, got any closing comments?
No, I just think there's loads to be excited about here. I'd like to take two as well. I'd like to take Jackson Hawes for the reasons that we said. And as we said throughout the podcast, pick your poison after that. Like if you have him with a Terrence Ferguson even in the third or the fourth round, or if you go from a Mason Taylor or a Fannin in the second round, I think that you can be really happy with what you've done and what you've come up with in the draft. So, and worst case scenario, if we do end up picking two guys in the fifth round, I think you can still be happy with that. So lots to be excited about here, and I can't wait for the draft to come. I think
oh my God,
or 34 days out now. So.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm just getting I'm so amped for this draft now. It's just like the draft, and then it was going to be OTAs and training camp, and before you know it, we're looking at the preseason and rocking into game one. I just can't wait for this season to get started. I know we're not expected to do much, but it feels kind of exciting, this rebuild being done the right way. So yeah, I'm optimistic. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking about tight ends, and that's the last joke I will do this season, if that was a joke. But we'll be back again next week. We'll be talking about something interesting, although I'm not quite sure what yet, but we will be back next week.
Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3.